Everyone, and welcome back to Scouting the Fins. This show is brought to you by Thompson Cigar. Use promo code 3yards20 for 20% off of your order of $75 or more. Premium cigars for an amazing price as well. Make sure you guys use the promo code 3yards20 for 20% off your order of $75 or more. Today, we're going to be talking about the free agent pass catchers, which includes the wide receivers and tight ends. Now, obviously, we won't be talking about all of them, but maybe some fits that could help the Miami Dolphins out. And, some key pieces that can help the Dolphins be a little bit more physical. My co-host today, Coach and Eric. Coach, how are we doing today?
Hey, doing well. Getting into the meat and potatoes of the offseason, obviously Senior Bowl going on this week. But nice to talk about something different than college players again. Definitely a subject that we need to discuss because, while the guards are the hot topic for the offseason, everything can't be focused on there. And, there's got to be some effort to get some more playmakers on the field as well.
Yeah, definitely about that. Speaking of the Senior Bowl, we will be doing a little bit of a deep dive of the offensive linemen in the Senior Bowl on OnlyFins on the premium vetted version, $4.99 a month on Discord. Make sure you check us out, discord.gg/OnlyFins, $4.99 a month on the laptop. You get premium access services such as our film review, stage shows, and premium, vetted, sourced news and analysis. Eric.
Yes, sir.
The Dolphins clearly need a wide receiver 3, maybe another tight end. Does this free agent class entice you in any way?
So I want to say yes and no. Because I just so much hinges on what happens with the Tyreek Hill situation. And obviously, that's not to say that there's any real indications going one way or the other. But I think we can all agree that the offseason looks massively different if we're planning around Tyreek Hill no longer being here. So in a world where you're looking for maybe a wide receiver 2 to Jayden Waddle, I'm not very excited because I think it's cost prohibitive this year. But in a world where you're looking for a wide receiver 3, there are quite a few guys that I actually like in free agency that makes some sense for the Dolphins.
Coach, is there anybody that makes sense for the Dolphins before we get into the analysis?
I mean, like Eric said, some of the guys that we're going to talk about tonight can be viewed in different ways. There's one guy in particular, probably the first guy we're going to talk about here, is somebody that I would view as a player that I'd really like to go after, as a replacement for Tyreek, if that's the type of player that we're looking to replace him with. But, if you're looking to, get that bigger type receiver, I'm not thrilled with those guys as number 2 type options, but there are guys that bring stuff to the receiver room that we don't have today.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about Washington wide receiver Dyami Brown. He's only 25 years old, was drafted in the 3rd round out of North Carolina. He had 59 receptions for 784 yards, 102 targets, which means a 57% catch rate. Obviously, I didn't go through all of the incompletions, the drops, and stuff like that. He does run a 4.4. Eric, is this your number 1 target?
Probably not, if I'm being honest, when it comes to a guy like Dyami Brown. Not that I think that the talent isn't there. I think Dyami Brown is a very good player, and I think in terms of the system, it's a good fit. It's just, I think the other guys that we're going to talk about a little bit later on kind of fill more of a specific role that I think that this receiver room is missing. And Dyami Brown, he's really more of that kind of, he's another speedy, deep threat. And I I wonder about the physicality at the catch point, and I wonder about how good he is outside blocking in the run game.
Yeah. Again, he's only 25. He's pretty young. His contract valuation by over the cap, maybe 2.4 to 2.5 million annually, which is pretty cheap for a guy who was a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type at Washington. He was pretty underutilized, but he had a career year at Washington with uh, what looks to be offensive rookie of the year, Jaden Daniels, and a new offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury, which makes it much, much easier on the wide receiver and the quarterback. This play I'm looking at right here on the all 22. It is a 3rd and 6, fourth quarter, 3 minutes and 20 seconds left up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are at the 35-yard line. And this is basically a drive concept right here, coach. Obviously, a drive concept is a post and an in-breaking route. Sometimes it could be from the same side of the field or different parts of the field, but this is what I'm looking at as a drive concept. If I'm going to go ahead and run the play right here. All right. We see Dyami Brown looks to work on a bit of an outside release, then works his way up inside, and then breaks on an in-breaking while the other receiver besides him is running the post. Now, the defensive back is trying his best to trail Dyami Brown. That's where the speed factor comes in. He's able to separate from here, has a lot of room to pretty much make this catch, and converts the first down. Coach, is this something that's a scheme fit for the Miami Dolphins, specifically based on how Mike McDaniel and Tua do on these intermediate and in-breaking routes?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very similar route to what we've seen from the Dolphins. You go back to, I don't know that the original vision of the McDaniel offense was to have two speedsters in Waddle and Hill, and that became an opportunity that presented itself when Hill became available. So, whether, this player makes sense for the Dolphins comes down to, does Mike McDaniel still feel that having those two speed guys will still work even if Tyreek is not here, right? Or, are we seeing that there's limitations with that and that, we need to add some more size in the room? So I do like Brown. We talked about his lower production, career high single season of just over 300 yards, which seems pretty low for him. And that, is probably why his contract is, the projection is where it is. If they move on from Tyreek Hill, but they still want to try to run the same type of offense that they've been running, then that's where I think that Brown would be a good replacement for Hill.
Yeah. Eric, looking at this other play, he's lined up as the outside X receiver. Obviously, he's 6'1", 192 pounds, a little bit taller than Jaylen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and Malik Washington. So certainly there's the size element over there along with his speed. He can line up all over the field. He can be used on RPOs. He can be used on glance routes, bubble screens, motions, you name it. So it gives you a little bit of that versatility for him playing inside and outside. But let's take a look at the route right here up against the Cleveland Browns. He's going vertically, and then he breaks out right out of his break, makes the defender hesitate, and secures the catch on a 3rd and long and gains some more yards after the catch. If the Dolphins move out of Tyreek Hill, besides Malik Washington and Jaylen Waddle, they don't have any other guys outside that can, create and work like this with Tua.
Yeah, no, I mean, Dyami Brown, and I think he kind of gets maybe a little bit of a pass his first couple years because you look at the quarterback situation that he had to deal with in Washington. Because I think, coming out, everybody kind of saw him as a guy that could be a really solid, potentially wide receiver 2 down the line. And I think some of that talent is still there. I would absolutely view him as an adequate starter along the outside with a Jaylen Waddle on the other side, with a Malik Washington along the inside. Granted, I think they'd still have to add somewhere else skill position wise. But in terms of a wide receiver room, I would be comfortable with that being my top 3.
Yeah. All right. We'll move to a different type of player. And this is actually a former Miami Dolphins wide receiver. Right after the Dolphins, he played with the Raiders and then the Falcons. And now he's with the Buffalo Bills, who lost in the AFC Championship game to who else but Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. Mac Hollins famously had the catch for the Dolphins up against the Raiders with Ryan Fitzpatrick as his quarterback, where Fitzpatrick literally got his neck twisted and Mac Hollins made the catch and put the Dolphins up, and it turned out to be an overtime win. He only had, 22 catches this season, but he's had 122 targets in his career and just 2,000 yards. Not a lot of receptions for a guy who's played what I believe is 7-8 seasons. Correct me if I'm wrong, Coach.
Yeah, it looks like 7 seasons.
Yeah, 7 seasons. Now, look, he's 6'4", 220 pounds. We know he can block. He's a crazy, funky guy, loves to dress up in crazy, funky ways. Only 2.6 million annual per year, guys. That's, again, cheap for a wide receiver 3 who has, caught passes from Tua Tagovailoa. He's a big-bodied red zone type of receiver as well. Eric, is a reunion in tour for Mac Hollins and the Dolphins?
I would be open to it personally. I'm not sure if that's the case. I look at a guy like Mac Hollins in terms of, number one, I think Buffalo would love to have him back next year. After the kind of season that he had for them this year, especially if he's just going to be 2.5 million. But number two, I think Mac Hollins is looking for that chance to have a more expanded role. And realistically, if Tyreek Hill stays, I don't know if he's going to be your wide receiver 3. I think Washington has the inside track to that right now, even if Mac Hollins was on the roster, just given what Mike McDaniel likes to do. But if you're looking for a guy that can be that blocker on the outside and be your big body receiver, go up and really take the ball at the catch point, you don't have a better option considering the price tag than Mac Hollins.
Coach, with Buffalo, Mac Hollins was put in motion a lot, number one, as a blocker or as the, F position player, which we've talked about a lot. In this play right here, which is up against the Dolphins, Buffalo is down by 7. Second quarter, 2 minutes and 33 seconds left, 3rd and 3. And he makes a first down conversion now. He comes right here on this motion as the forced motion player. Cam Smith is following him. Free release, no one's on him. Flat play, first down. Boom. Easy. Mike McDaniel was able to concoct up these types of plays for any type of wide receiver. But can Mac Hollins actually be that big slot type of wide receiver or hybrid tight end where, you can disguise a lot of things, which the Dolphins already do?
Yeah, so I think that he does a lot of things that you like. He was with the Dolphins for the 3 seasons prior to Mike McDaniel arriving. And then, in my opinion, Hollins mirrors Trent Sherfield in a lot of ways. And Sherfield was the one that came to the Dolphins in 2022 when McDaniel got here. I think there was a lot of overlap in their type of play, and I think that's why the Dolphins chose Sherfield over Hollins. So I think that Hollins is going to be the type of player that Mike McDaniel would like. Obviously I have no idea what, how Hollins feels about returning to the Dolphins. But he's a dependable target. He's not a wide receiver 2 type because, I don't think he creates a lot of separation, not necessarily a contested catch guy. Like, he's kind of funny in the sense that, like, he has a really big catch radius and he'll catch the ball away from his body well. I just don't think that he's the type of guy that you can throw an end zone fade to and have confidence, but he does a good job of, finding those soft spots in the zones. We see him in the motions. We see him, definitely one of the better blockers that we're going to talk about, and that's something that's missing. So I do think there's an opportunity for him in Miami, but like Eric said, not going to be wide receiver 2, right? That's probably going to be something completely different, and it's going to be tough for him to get more receptions than Malik Washington. So to come to Miami, you're probably looking at more of a wide receiver 4 and special teams role. And I don't know if that's where Hollins wants to spend the next year or two.
That's true, but we have to take a look at his run blocking skills, run blocking prowess. He could put Julian Hill down towards the depth chart, or he could be a replacement for Durham Smythe as, a blocker in the run game. He's going to be cheaper than Durham Smythe. He can play special teams as well. He can be a replacement for Durham Smythe and also fill that wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 type of role when the Dolphins are out and empty. And specifically, if they're looking to run out of 11 and even 21 personnel, Hollins can be that guy. If we take a look at this play up against the San Francisco 49ers, it's second quarter, 8:48, first and 10. Buffalo's up 13-3 on Buffalo's 35-yard line. Mac Hollins is on the outside, and then he motions to be a tight end blocker right behind the 6th offensive lineman and Alec Anderson. And this goes for a big play for James Cook. He's able to block right on the outside. He's the lead blocker for James Cook, and it's a touchdown. Coach, is it just that simple for Mac Hollins, or does he make the run blocking better for whatever team he's going to go to?
No, he absolutely makes it better. I mean, he is a wide receiver by position, but when you compare his blocking to a lot of those, move type tight ends, like he's in that conversation in terms of a blocker. He likes to get in there and do the dirty stuff. The effort is there, the skill is there. He is definitely a guy who improves your run game.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we won't get to see Mac Hollins at at the big game. But speaking of the big game, the best app for your big game party is actually on your phone, whether it's your iPhone or your Android. It's called Underdog. Underdog is the best place to cash in on all your takes during the playoffs, which players are going off and which ones are ice cold, just like Buffalo, where Mac Hollins played. Make your entries in just a few taps. With their pick'em game, you could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on players' stats, yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and more. Underdog is the only pick'em platform that puts the power to cash out in your hands. Now you can either keep riding with your entry or tap the Win Now button to cash out whenever you want. Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose. Underdog is the best place to play pick'em. Download the Underdog app today and use promo code 3yards to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Higher or lower, you make the call on Underdog.
Be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 19 plus in Alabama, New England, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Must be.
All right. Well, we took a look at De'Ami Brown. We took a look at Mac Hollins. Those are 6-foot guys, and a lot of the wide receivers we'll be talking about today are 6-foot guys. But the wide receivers that I've listed up, 6'4", 6'2". The other 2 pass catchers for the tight ends is 6'6" and 6'3". These are big dudes. The Dolphins are lacking a big physical target, a big physical presence in the room as well. And I think the other guy that might solve this as a wide receiver 3 or a big slot is Denver Broncos wide receiver Lil Jordan Humphrey. Eric, when you watched Lil Jordan Humphrey, especially in the run game, what were your thoughts?
So I mean, watching him in the run game is probably one of my favorite things about his game. Um, Obviously, the guy being 6'4", 220 at the wide receiver spot isn't something that can be coached. But you're also looking at a guy who's an extremely willing blocker on the outside, and a guy that knows how to use that physicality in the run game. Kind of, in a sense, like a younger Mac Hollins, really, as a guy that is a few years younger, if you're going in that direction. Um, yeah, I mean, I think adding him again as a wide receiver 4, and I think, maybe a guy like Humphrey is a little bit more accepting of that, being a little bit younger at this point, than Mac Hollins would be. I think he would be a really, really solid option.
Yeah, Lil Jordan Humphrey has been on 3 teams within 5 years. This is his 5th season. This is his 2nd season with the Denver Broncos. His APY is only 1.25 million, which is insanely cheap as a potential wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. When I took a look at his stats on third down, especially receiving, only 2 for 5. In his career, he's only had 62 catches for 770 yards. Last year with the Broncos, 31 catches for 293 yards. Obviously, I'm more so looking for that third down reliable guy that if Jayden Waddle or Tyreek Hill are covered, you can give it to a guy like a little Jordan Humphrey, especially if Jonnu Smith or Devon A-Chain are also not in the game. I don't think he'll be getting a lot of targets just because he's not the most nuanced route runner for this scheme. But Sean Payton has described Lil Jordan Humphrey as smart, intellectual, and someone that can pick up things really, really fast, which is why I do think that it might be a little bit too overblown about Lil Jordan Humphrey's catching ability. Coach, when you watch Lil Jordan catching passes or even run blocking, is this someone where you can mold him into a big slot type of guy?
Yeah, I mean, at 27 years old, there's still room to improve. I think he operated out of the slot a good bit for the Broncos. I think that of the guys that we're going to talk about tonight, he's one of the better run after catch guys, despite the big frame.
Mhm.
That seen the Broncos use him on screens and stuff, and that's not something you're going to see Mac Hollins doing. Um, Mac Hollins is more of a straight line speed type guy. So, there's, a lot of different things that he offers. One of the things that he doesn't do that I think really hurts him, especially when we're talking about a wide receiver 4 type player over his career, he really hasn't played many special team snaps. And that's not to say that he can't do it, but typically when you've got a guy who, last year was career high in targets, catches and yards at 45 targets, and you talked about the catches and yards, but that those aren't big numbers, and if that's your career year so far, usually those type of players have more special team snaps and they're finding other ways to stay on rosters. So I'm not sure what the reason is for Humphrey not playing many special team snaps, but I think that could be where the valuation is low if you're looking at a wide receiver 4 that doesn't give you a whole lot on special teams.
Yeah, his snap counts might just be more increased on the offensive side of the ball because the Broncos did run more so of 11 personnel compared to the Miami Dolphins. Coach, I'm looking at this run play here in the first quarter, 3rd and short, 3rd and 1. The Broncos are running a crack toss. I think this right here is a textbook block, a perfect block for little Jordan Humphrey to create the lane for Javonte Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, the idea there is obviously you want to seal that defender inside, and he doesn't, quite get that. But, if you don't get that initial seal, then, we talk about it a lot with the offensive line that you want to see that strain to continue to try to win that position. And that's what you're seeing here. Like that, if that's one of our guys that we've seen this year, like they're either getting blown into the backfield or that defender is able to cross their face and make the play there. So I really like the fact that even though, doesn't get butt to the sideline and seal him in completely, but just the strain that little Jordan Humphrey has there of, continuing to, press that defender and not just let him run to the outside.
Yeah, you also have to take into factor that Denver had probably one of the better offensive lines this year as well. So that may get into the factor, but Sean Payton doesn't necessarily, hold back a lot. We've obviously heard his comments about Tua Tagovailoa before. He kind of blasted him, and then Tua and the Dolphins dropped 70 points on the Denver Broncos in 2023 to prove to Sean Payton that, yeah, Tua can do it, and you're just straight up completely wrong. But that 70-20 game is, a meme for something else. All right, the next guy we'll be talking about is Tennessee Titans wide receiver Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, 6'2", 211 pounds, 32 catches for 497 yards, but a career year in touchdowns. He had 9 touchdown catches this season, which leads me to believe this was Will Levis's number one target besides Calvin Ridley, and he's the big body guy that the Dolphins have been missing in their red zone since Matt Collins. Eric, when you watched Westbrook-Ikhine, what were your initial thoughts? And do you have a player comparison comp for Westbrook-Ikhine that could fit this Mike McDaniel Tua offense?
So as far as a guy like Nick Westbrook, Ikhine, when you look at a lot of his touchdowns, you would think 9 scores, he's really dominant in the red zone. But a lot of his touchdowns really were kind of Tennessee hitting the deep ball. He was their big time threat downfield. I look at Nick Westbrook, Ikhine, and maybe this is a little lofty, but I kind of see a guy that can stretch the field, but is also respectable on the outside and can hold his own as a blocker. Really, I guess what I'm saying is I see maybe like a rich man's Trent Sherfield, kind of a little bit of a better version of what he gave you on the offensive end. But he is one of those guys that I think might be teetering on just outside of the Dolphins' price range, depending on what the rest of the room looks like.
Yep, Coach, this is a 3rd and 10 play on Tennessee's 44 in the third quarter where they're down by 3.
And, most of the receivers on our roster, hasn't gone over 500 yards in his career in a season, but at the same time, I think part of that, you got to look at some of the quarterback play that he's had as well. And, if you, so I'm probably a little hesitant to put him in that wide receiver 2 conversation, but in terms of a wide receiver 3, that guy that you're not depending on just, drive in and drive out, I think that he, provides a really intriguing option there for somebody that, can win that contested catch, can, stretch the field vertically, and has the size and, the willingness to contribute in the run game as well.
Yeah, career year, in his career, he's only had 1,700 career yards. But last season, he had one of the best yards per catch stats that I've ever seen, 18.3 yards per catch, which leads me to believe he fits the intermediate part of this Dolphins receiving game. However, Eric did mention he may be out of the price range, and comp-wise, I see him getting something similar to the 49ers and Jawan Jennings, someone that can also block, that can also catch, similar body type as well. Coach, you mentioned him potentially being a scheme fit as a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. He's right here all alone as the X receiver up against Elijah Molden, and he gets pressed pretty well here. He uses his physicality. He goes right up against him, continues to run the slant, makes a tight window catch. He doesn't drop this ball. He makes it consistent right here. And this is a pretty good plays ball by Will Levis right here. And Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is able to haul this in for a first down on third down up against this vaunted Chargers pass defense.
Yeah, like I said, that's kind of the funny thing with him. This is a tight window throw. Not the easiest concentration wise, and these are the type of balls that he'll go up there and get. It's the wide open, nobody around you that the focus seemed to lack a little bit in the reps that I had watched with him. But definitely a good rep there, able to play through contact. We know that especially against the Chargers, that I think it was in 2023 that they really came out and jammed the Dolphins at the line of scrimmage, and there was we had trouble getting off the line with that. So getting a receiver that has that size and can overcome some of that would be a huge benefit.
All right, as we move off of the wide receivers, we'll go to the two tight ends I want to mention, and I think that'll fit the Dolphins pretty well. The first one is Washington tight end John Bates. John Bates had a career year with Jayden Daniels. So did Dyami Brown as well. And the funny thing about Dyami Brown was that Washington Commanders fans think he's a jag, that he's just another guy, that he's mid, he's an average wide receiver. I'm curious to see how much money Dyami Brown is going to get, especially after the season he's had and great quarterback play for him. John Bates also had great quarterback play and potential offensive rookie of the year in Jayden Daniels. 6'6", 259 pounds, 13 catches for 84 yards, 2 touchdowns in his career, 88 catches for 592 yards. His average APY is $2 million a year. Eric, I feel like he's more of the blocker type that can obviously replace Durham Smythe and even put Julian Hill down the depth chart into tight end 3, maybe potentially the practice squad.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where a guy like John Bates slots in. And I think that John Bates is the kind of signing, that smart teams make. Because you look at the role that Julian Hill and Durham Smythe had this year. And the fact of the matter is, for what this offense requires, those guys were not good enough. As far as the blocking aspect of their games. And John Bates, not only are you getting younger at the tight end position, you're getting cheaper than Durham Smythe, and you're getting a more productive player. So, I mean, unless you're going somewhere in the draft unexpectedly, John Bates would absolutely be, I think, a natural fit to come in and take that Durham Smythe spot or / Jordan Hill spot. Coach,
do you think Bates is the best, if he were on the Dolphins, do you think he'd be the best blocker, better than Alec Ingold as well? Because on this play that I'm seeing right here up against the Arizona Cardinals, it's what, third and 1, third and short, second quarter, 11:44, tie game on Arizona's 35. He's able to seal the defender off. So do you think he would become the best blocker on this Dolphins team for maybe $2 million a year?
I mean, like Alec Ingold does a lot of stuff outside of just the blocking. Like Alec Ingold is a really good fixer, right? Especially the outside zone stuff. Alec Ingold, is a high IQ type player that, as he's going by stuff, does a good job of chipping before he gets there. So I don't know that I would put him above Alec Ingold in that sense. I think that he would be a better version of Durham Smythe. I think that, when they tried to put Julian Hill in there, I think they were hoping that his size and athleticism would translate in the passing game some as well, which obviously really didn't happen this year. John Bates, for me, we talk about Greer and the way that he handles free agency by kind of stocking up the roster with the serviceable guys, so that as you get to the draft, that hopefully you can draft best available, and you're not pressed into drafting a player of need. I mean, I've said that my number one target, if he's there at 13, is Tyler Warren, right? But so this would still be the type of player that you could go out and sign. It's not going to prohibit you from drafting a Tyler Warren, but if a Tyler Warren is gone, or if you decide to go in a different direction, you still have a competent player that can come in and is still an upgrade over what we had last year. I think that the Durham Smythe comp is a really good one, because I think they do a lot of the same type of things, and that Bates does it better. He's not going to be a big time receiver, but I do think that if he's third or fourth in your progression, he's a dependable type of receiver. He can catch the ball. He's not just a third tackle type of guy. So I do think that there is some value in the receiving game there, but obviously his main draw is going to be as a blocker.
The other thing is, Coach, that you mentioned, he'll be a clear upgrade over Durham Smythe. Bates has also been the F position player for the Washington Commanders on several plays, either for running or blocking. Right here, we see him coming into motion up against the Detroit Lions. It is 3rd and 5 in the fourth quarter, 4 minutes and 8 seconds. 4 minutes and 8 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Motions over. Shoots through the A gap. Linebacker isn't covering him. Wide open. And it's a catch. And he's not the best receiver. He can't get the yards after the catch. But if you need a solid 2 or 3 yards on short, he should be able to get it and fall down and get you right that first down right then and there. All right, the next person we have in our final pass catcher and offensive skill position player of the day is Carolina Panthers tight end Tommy Tremble. He's coming off of a rookie contract, 6'3". His average is around $4 million APY, which is a little bit more expensive than John Bates. He's an outstanding blocker as well. In his career, he's got 85 catches for 782 yards and 9 touchdowns. Last season with the Carolina Panthers, he had 23 catches for 234 yards. I think more so, again, another Durham Smythe type of replacement is going to be that same type of run blocker. But do you think Tommy Tremble is a better fit than John Bates, Eric?
So I guess the answer really depends on what it is you want out of that second tight end, because I think you're looking at Tommy Tremble as a guy that can give you a lot of that blocking ability. But I do think that he does represent a higher ceiling as a receiver than a guy like a John Bates or a Durham Smythe, maybe even than a Julian Hill for that matter. So I think he would be a very good fit for the offense, particularly because you're not necessarily sacrificing anything as far as the blocking goes, and you're also getting a guy that's just a better receiver, who is in, again, common theme with these guys, not great situations, except for John Bates.
Coach?
Yeah, I agree. When I did my initial free agent scouting, before I got into the draft stuff, Tremble was the guy that was at the top of the list that I wanted for the Dolphins. And I mean, obviously, Jonnu is tight end 1, right? But, when you look at whether it's a Tremble or a Tyler Warren, like those guys can play as many snaps as Jonnu, and you're not you don't have to say it's either or. I would take Tyler Warren over Tommy Tremble, right? But if they wanted to go in a different direction in the draft, Tommy Tremble, in my opinion, would be a great option to sign and be able to say, okay, we have upgraded the Y position in this offense, and we've got somebody who is a better blocker than what we have and provide some of that separation and run after catch ability that we're lacking at the tight end position as well. So I think that, if I'm ranking tight ends, both in the draft and free agency, Warren is my number one, but Tremble would be the next option for me.
Wow, high praise for Tommy Tremble. And Coach Eric, you got to take a look at this play on this Bryce Young scramble for the touchdown up against the Atlanta Falcons towards the end of the fourth quarter. He's holding his own. He stonewalls the defender right here. This is like a 4 to 5 second block. Like, this is a very long block right here. Like, holy crap.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Like you were gonna say, it's a really good rep. You don't often see linebackers, especially kind of one-on-one there. It looks like maybe Jalen Coker was gonna go ahead and chip the guy, but it looks like Trimble didn't need much of the help. Just really impressive stuff for him. And that's the reason why I think Coach Eric and I think as highly as we do of Tommy Tremble. I think he'd be a great addition.
Coach?
Yeah, I agree. My screen seems to be froze up. I don't know if it is for anybody else. But that rep specifically, like when you look at tight ends and the footwork there, right? Good job of keeping a wide base and being able to, basically mirror dodge with that defender. Like, that's not something you see with a tight end very often. You'll get a quick hit and they'll, lose contact. But a rep like this is just a lot better than what you're going to find from a lot of tight ends.
Yeah, I think money-wise, it'll come into play, especially for the offense in the tight end position. I think they'll go more so for a guy like John Bates if they were to sign a tight end. And I think wide receiver-wise, I think De'Ami Brown would be just a little bit too expensive. But a guy like Nick Westbrook-Akine or Lil Jordan Humphrey would be my best bet just based off of the money, because the Dolphins are in a little bit of a tight cap situation depending on what happens with Tyreek Hill. Are they going to keep Bradley Chubb? Is Teron Armstead coming back? Is he going to retire? Are they going to restructure him? Like, there's a lot of decisions they have to make before they even start to sign people in free agency. But I'm going to say for that, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, and even the tight end position, I think they'll try to go for someone who has a low APY. But I will say before we close this show off, did you guys see that DK Metcalf does not want to be part of the New England Patriots if he were to get traded? I'm surprised there's even trade rumors or possibilities happening for DK Metcalf. Could Chris Greer potentially, swindle his way, move Tyreek out, and bring DK Metcalf in? Go ahead, Eric.
It would certainly be on brand for Chris Greer. And I like DK in what he gives the offense as far as a little bit of a different dynamic than Tyreek. But just principally speaking here, with the way that you look at the teams that are in the Super Bowl, obviously the Eagles have 2 really good wide receivers. Chiefs, not so much. Washington, you had Terry McLaurin. He was the number 1 guy over there, kind of unquestioned. On the other side, in the AFC, you had the Bills, who Mac Hollins or Dalton Kincaid were their number 1 receiver. So I'm not sure I want to go through the whole tying $50 million in cap up in the wide receiver room thing again. I don't think with the way that this team needs to be built, you can really afford that at the moment.
Coach?
I get what Eric's saying. And I agree that when you look at it from that lens, that's a tough pill to swallow with how much money you would continue to have tied up in the wide receiver room. The flip side of that would be that, when you move on from a Tyreek Hill, it's really tough to bring somebody in of even close to the same caliber. So, if you could work that trade and get DK Metcalf, then you are getting, a high level, a number 1 type receiver that you're not going to find if you just, let's say cut Tyreek and try to go find something in free agency. It's going to be a lot better product. It's, DK brings a lot of the stuff that we've talked about that you want in this wide receiver room in terms of the size, in terms of the physicality. That's definitely stuff that we're missing. So there's a lot of reasons to like it, but I do get what Eric is saying about, we look at overall team building philosophies that, tying that much money up in there going forward is tough to do.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to take a look at the fit. He's 6'2", big bodied, really fast, scares the living crap out of defensive backs if he's going deep, which opens up short possibilities for Jonnu, Devon Achane, Jayden Waddle, Malik Washington, and whoever our wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 is. And he can be that catch point guy, big red zone target as well. But this may be, a long gone possibility, but you never know. You never know what could happen and what deals Chris Grier could make. And as always, folks, stick with us here on Scouting the Fins. We will continue our free agency series here. As always, go Fins.